The crimson silk red jacket couldn't hide the predator beneath. But when Tae-hyung heard his maid crying through walls designed to muffle screams, the most feared man in Seoul's underworld did something he'd never done before. He knocked. Naomi. His voice, usually a cold instrument of command, was flat, but her first name on his lips stopped her cold. He had never used it in 6 months. What happened? She shook her head, clutching the phone that had delivered the devastating news. "It's personal, Mr. Kang. I apologize for disturbing the quiet." "My mother," she managed, tears finally winning the battle against her composure. "Chicago, stroke. I have 72 hours." 72 hours? With an expired visa and $75,000 in loan shark debt that owned her passport and her future. She was trapped. She thought she was invisible, just the elegant black woman in the white uniform gliding through his luxury penthouse like a ghost. She had no idea Tae-hyung had been watching her the entire time. Tae-hyung didn't do compassion. He built his empire on calculated violence and the chilling silence of absolute authority. Emotions were liabilities. Attachments were weakness. So why was he already turning from her door, pulling out his phone, and making a call in rapid-fire Korean that sounded less like a business deal and more like a declaration of war? He had noticed things about her. The precise ritual of her morning tea, the elegant, unyielding posture, the quiet sorrow she carried. "Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. I have missed you all. Missed all the experiences we've had together. It's been a rough ride, but trust me, we're getting everything back and running. So stick around. I need your support on YouTube now more than ever. Thank you specially for sticking around to this very moment. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now back to the story. The door opened to devastation wrapped in cotton. Naomi stood in the threshold wearing a simple nightshirt, face ravaged by tears, phone clutched in trembling hands like a lifeline that had already failed. Her elegant composure, the carefully constructed armor she wore through his penthouse each day, had shattered completely. She looked raw, vulnerable, human in a way that made his chest constrict. The contrast arrested him. Her brokenness against his predatory stillness, her tears against his tattoos, her cotton against his silk. What happened? Not a question, a command that expected answers. She straightened instinctively, muscle memory overriding crisis. "It's personal, Mr. Kang. I apologize for disturbing your evening. It won't happen again." Naomi. Her name again. The intimacy of it made her flinch like he'd touched her. She pressed back against the doorframe, something wild flickering behind her eyes. The urge to run, to hide, to become invisible again. But there was nowhere left to hide. The story broke from her in fractured pieces. Her mother, Lorraine, 68 years old. Massive stroke 3 hours ago in Chicago. ICU at Northwestern Memorial. The doctors were clear, 72 hours until family had to make life support decisions. 72 hours to say goodbye or fight for miracles. But Naomi couldn't go. Her visa had expired 6 months ago. She'd overstayed, flying under immigration radar to keep sending money home, to keep her mother's small house out of foreclosure, to keep the medical bills from drowning them both. She'd thought she had time to fix it, get legal help, save enough for proper documentation. Time had run out. And there's the debt. she whispered, voice breaking on the word. $75,000 to loan sharks in Koreatown. I borrowed it last year to pay her medical bills after the heart surgery. They own my passport now. They said if I run, they'll report me, have me deported. I can't go to her. I can't. The sob that escaped her was animal, wounded. I thought I could save enough, get everything legal, bring her here eventually. But I ran out of time. Tae-hyung watched her crumble, and something shifted in his chest. The composed maid disappeared, replaced by a daughter, trapped and desperate, watching her mother die from 7,000 miles away. A memory surfaced, uninvited. Himself at 19, in a prison cell, receiving news of his own mother's death. The guards wouldn't let him attend the funeral. He'd screamed until his voice gave out, then sat in silence for 3 days, learning that some pain had no outlet, no resolution. He would not let her carry that particular darkness. Names, he said, quietly, methodically. The loan sharks. What organization? Why does that? Names, Naomi. She told him. He extracted every detail, the visa situation, the hospital, the timeline, the exact terms of her debt. His questions were precise, clinical, building a complete picture of the cage she'd been living in. Why do you care? She finally asked, confusion cutting through grief. You're not just anything. The words came out harder than intended, rough with something he refused to name. Not in my house. She stared at him, stunned into silence. Tae-hyung pulled out his phone, dialed. When his associate answered, he switched to Korean, but the tone transcended language. Commands, threats, absolute authority mobilizing resources across continents. He ended the call, met her eyes. Pack a bag. We leave in 3 hours. We? Her voice barely a whisper. You think I'm letting you handle loan sharks alone?
At 2:30 a.m., the black SUV pulled into the warehouse district like a predator sliding through shadows. Sodium lights cast everything in sickly orange, illuminating forgotten corners of the city where legitimate business ended and survival economics began. Naomi sat in the back seat, surrounded by Tae-hyung's security team, 3 men who moved with military precision and spoke in clipped Korean. But her attention fixed on the man beside her, because somewhere between his penthouse and this desolate stretch of concrete, Tae-hyung had transformed completely. Gone was the silk shirt and barefoot elegance. He wore black tactical clothes that emphasized the violence coiled in his frame, a gun visible at his hip. The businessman had disappeared, replaced by the gangster, the man whose reputation built empires and buried enemies. She'd known intellectually what he was. Seeing it manifested in Kevlar and cold eyes was something else entirely. The loan shark operation occupied a dingy office wedged between abandoned factories. Through grimy windows, she could see men playing cards, smoke hanging thick in air that smelled of desperation and casual violence. "Stay here," Tae-hyung said, his hand briefly touching her knee, a gesture that might have been reassuring if his expression wasn't carved from stone. He entered alone. Naomi watched through the SUV's tinted windows, heart hammering, as Tae-hyung approached the card table. The men looked up, postures shifting from relaxed to alert in seconds. One stood, Marcus Chen, Korean-American, mid-40s, wearing expensive watch that didn't match his surroundings. "I'm here about Naomi Richardson's debt." Even through glass, she heard the ice in his voice. Marcus shuffled papers, performative authority. "She's not eligible for negotiation. She signed contracts, agreed to terms." Tae-hyung placed a black duffel bag on the table, unzipped it. Stacks of cash, neatly banded, filled the interior. $75,000 in hundreds. "The debt is paid. You'll return her passport. You'll never contact her again." Marcus stared at the money, then at Tae-hyung. Recognition dawned slowly, like watching someone realize they'd stepped into quicksand. "Mr. Kang, we didn't know she was connected to you. If we'd known..." Now you do. Tae-hyung's hand rested casually on his gun. The gesture wasn't theatrical, it was promise. Do we have an understanding? Marcus's hand trembled as he retrieved Naomi's passport from a locked drawer. Paperwork was signed with jerky movements, witnessed by men who suddenly couldn't meet anyone's eyes. As Tae-hyung turned to leave, he paused. If I hear her name from your organization again, if she receives a single phone call, a single letter, a single moment of fear, I'll burn this building with everyone inside. The warehouse district disappeared behind them. In the SUV, Naomi clutched her passport like a holy relic, staring at the photo of herself from 3 years ago, younger, hopeful, believing in simple plans and linear futures. How much do I owe you? Her voice barely functioned. Nothing. I don't accept charity. His eyes met hers, dark and intense, reflecting streetlights like a wolf's. It's not charity, it's protection. I didn't ask to be protected. You didn't have to ask. The finality in those words should have angered her. The possessiveness, the presumption, the way he'd rearranged her life without permission. But exhaustion and gratitude and something more dangerous tangled together, leaving her speechless. The private jet waited at a small executive airport, medical team already on board. Naomi stood at the base of the stairs, overwhelmed. This is too much. I can't. You can. His hand settled on her lower back, guiding her up. And you will. At 35,000 feet, suspended between her past and uncertain future, Naomi finally broke. Sobs poured from somewhere deep and primal, grief and fear and relief colliding. Tae-hyung didn't touch her, but he moved closer, his presence a wall between her and the world. She'll live, he said quietly. I promise you. You can't promise that. His eyes held hers in the dim cabin light. Watch me. Northwestern Memorial Hospital's ICU was a cathedral of beeping machines and hushed urgency, where life hung suspended in bags of clear fluid and ventilator rhythms. Lorraine Richardson lay small and fragile against white sheets, intubated, her rich brown skin ashen under fluorescent lights. Monitors tracked her vitals in green lines and red numbers that meant everything and nothing. The doctor delivered his prognosis with practiced gentleness: severe ischemic stroke, significant brain swelling, the next 72 hours critical. Guarded hope wrapped in medical terminology that translated to wait and pray. Naomi sat at her mother's bedside, holding her hand with desperate tenderness, whispering prayers and memories into the antiseptic air. Remember when I was 7 and tried to bake you a birthday cake? Burned it so bad the smoke alarm went off. You ate it anyway, told me it was the best gift you'd ever received. Her voice cracked. You have to wake up, Mama. I can't do this without you. Tae-hyung stood back, observing from the doorway. Watching this woman, his composed, elegant maid, navigate crisis with a grace that broke his heart. She was strength personified, tenderness weaponized against despair. Everything he'd built his life avoiding, everything he'd convinced himself was weakness. He stepped into the hallway, made calls. By the time Naomi emerged 2 hours later, he'd arranged for Dr. Sarah Kim, the best stroke neurologist in Chicago, a Korean-American specialist from Johns Hopkins, to review Lorraine's case. Expedited MRI scheduled for morning. Access to experimental treatment protocols not typically available for another 6 months. Naomi overheard him confirming details in rapid Korean. You can't just... I can. He ended the call, met her exhausted gaze. And I am. The tension between them crystallized, her independence warring with his intervention, gratitude colliding with resentment at having her agency stripped away, even in service of saving her mother. She wanted to be angry, but anger required energy she didn't have. Evening descended. Tae-hyung physically escorted her to the hospital cafeteria, refusing to let her survive on vending machine coffee in terror. She picked at institutional food, each bite an act of will. Why are you doing this? The question finally escaped, raw and desperate. He was quiet for a long moment, choosing words carefully. 6 months ago, you interviewed for the position. Do you remember what you said when I asked why I should hire you? The memory surfaced through fog. She'd been so nervous, sitting in his pristine office, trying to project competence while intimidated by everything: his reputation, his wealth, the danger that radiated from him like heat. I said, I see my job as creating peace in someone else's chaos. That's worth doing well. Yes. His eyes held hers across the cheap cafeteria table. You've given me peace for 6 months. Peace I didn't know I needed. This is reciprocal. That's not how employer-employee relationships work. I've never followed conventional rules. Something unspoken and dangerous crackled between them. The fluorescent lights seemed too bright suddenly, the air too thin. Naomi felt it in her chest, the recognition that they'd crossed invisible boundaries, that whatever existed between them had evolved beyond professional courtesy into something neither could name. She broke eye contact first, self-preservation kicking in, but her voice softened. Thank you. I mean it. He nodded once, understanding everything she couldn't say. The gratitude, the fear, the way he'd become essential to her survival in ways that terrified her. Finish your food, he said quietly. Then we'll go back. I won't leave you alone in this. And somehow, that promise felt more intimate than anything they'd shared before.
Day 3 in Chicago brought tentative hope. Lorraine's condition had stabilized, brain swelling reducing, vitals improving, Dr. Kim cautiously optimistic about recovery prospects. Naomi had allowed herself to breathe for the first time in 72 hours. She stepped out for coffee, needing 10 minutes away from the ICU's oppressive vigilance. When she returned, balancing 2 cups, she found Tae-hyung in the hallway, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Korean in a tone that made her blood freeze. His expression was cold rage barely contained, every muscle in his body coiled tight. The businessman veneer had evaporated, leaving only the gangster, lethal, calculating, furious. He ended the call, saw her. We need to talk, privately. The hospital stairwell was empty, concrete and echoes. Naomi set down the coffee cups with trembling hands. What happened? Your mother's been moved. The words didn't compute. What? Moved where? By who? The Jade Serpents. His voice was clinical, factual, which somehow made it worse. Rival Korean gang. We've had territorial conflicts in Seoul for years. They've had surveillance on me since I arrived. Saw us together at the airport, the hotel, here. Made assumptions. Naomi's blood ran cold. What kind of assumptions? That you matter to me. Simple statement. Weighted with implications that made the air feel too thick to breathe. Do I? The words escaped before she could stop them, desperate and raw. His jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath tattooed skin. That's not the current concern. He pulled out his phone, turned the screen toward her. Video message, timestamp from 20 minutes ago. Lorraine, still intubated, still unconscious, but in a different room. Unfamiliar equipment, unfamiliar walls, strange men moving in the background. A voice, accented English over Korean. Mr. Kang, this is Park Min-jun. You have something I want. Your territory in Gangnam. I now have something you want. Your choice. Sign over the territory, or her mother dies in 48 hours. I'll be in touch with transfer details. The video ended. Naomi's legs gave out. She sank onto the concrete steps, the world tilting sideways. This is my fault. I should have stayed invisible. I should have kept my distance. I should have... Stop. Tae-hyung crouched before her, hands gripping her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. This is on them, not you. Let me trade myself. The words tumbled out, frantic. They want leverage. I'll give them leverage. Just let me... No. The word was absolute, terrifying in its finality. A door slamming shut on every option but his. My mother will die. She won't. He cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. First intimate touch beyond guidance, beyond professional courtesy. His hands were warm, calloused, impossibly gentle. But you need to trust me. Trust you to what? Start a war? His smile was dark, dangerous, promised violence that made her shiver. The war started the moment they touched your mother. I can't let people die for me, her voice broke. I can't. You don't get a choice anymore, Naomi. His eyes held hers unflinching. You stopped being expendable the moment you became mine. I'm not yours. Keep telling yourself that. The possessiveness should have angered her, should have triggered every instinct about autonomy and independence. But sitting in a hospital stairwell, her mother kidnapped by gangsters, the world collapsing around her, his certainty felt like the only solid ground left. What are you going to do? She whispered. His thumb traced her cheekbone one more time before he stood, pulling out his phone again. What I should have done the moment they looked at you. He started making calls, and Naomi realized she'd just witnessed Mercy's last moment before the monster emerged.
Tae-hyung made calls with surgical precision, mobilizing his entire Chicago network in under 2 hours. Naomi hadn't known he had reached this far, this deep. But associates materialized like ghosts answering a summoning. Jin Woo, the strategist with wireframe glasses and a mind like a chess computer. Hee-jin, tech specialist who could crack anything with a circuit board. Tae-hyung, enforcement, built like a concrete wall and twice as immovable. The hotel suite transformed into a war room, laptops covering every surface, surveillance feeds cycling through screens, mapping software tracking Jade Serpent movements across Chicago's underworld. Hygiene isolated medical equipment suppliers who could support life support systems, narrowed possibilities to 3 locations. Naomi watched Tae-hyung transform completely. The elegant businessman who'd knocked on her door dissolved into the gang lord, precise, brutal, commanding absolute authority with single syllables. Men twice his age deferred without question. He moved through tactical planning like conducting an orchestra of violence. She wasn't allowed to leave. Security stationed outside her adjoining room. Trapped, helpless, watching her mother's life become collateral damage in a war she'd accidentally started. 24 hours in, first strike. The Jade Serpent's primary drug warehouse on the west side erupted in flames at 3 a.m. Not police, Tae-hyung's men. $2 million in product burned to ash while security cameras mysteriously malfunctioned. Message delivered to Park Min-jun's phone. You took something of mine. 36 hours in, second strike. Park Min-jun's younger brother, lieutenant in the organization, found beaten and zip-tied outside a police station, accompanied by a USB drive containing evidence of Jade Serpent operations spanning 5 years. Federal prosecutors received anonymous packages before sunrise. Hygiene triangulated the location, abandoned medical facility in Southside, formerly a dialysis center, still equipped with necessary infrastructure. 42 hours in, Naomi broke. She bribed her security guard with the emergency cash Tae-hyung had given her, slipped through the hotel service entrance, and arrived at his command center as they finalized assault plans. Tae-hyung looked up from tactical layouts, his expression thunderous. How did you? I want to be there when you get her back. Absolutely not. She's my mother. This is my fault. Naomi's voice cracked with fury and desperation. I won't sit in a hotel room while other people risk their lives for my mistakes. It's not your fault. His control shattered, voice rising. You think I'm doing this for gratitude? For obligation? Then why? She stepped closer, challenging. Why start a war for your maid? Because seeing you cry broke something in me I didn't know I still had. The words detonated between them. Silence rushed in, charged and trembling. They stood too close, breathing hard, the entire room witnessing something neither could take back. Jin-woo cleared his throat diplomatically. "We move in 2 hours." Tae-hyung stared at Naomi, jaw clenched, warring with himself. Finally, "You stay in the tactical van with Heejin. You don't move, you don't engage." She nodded. Victory and terror in equal measure. 2 hours later, sitting in the van outside the abandoned medical facility, watching body camera feeds on Heejin's monitors, Naomi felt reality crystallize. "If something happens to me," she started. "Nothing will happen." Tae-hyung checked his weapon with practiced efficiency. Tae-hyung. His name. First time she'd said it. His eyes closed briefly, like the intimacy caused physical pain. "If something happens, promise me you'll let this go. Don't escalate. Don't." "I can't promise that." "Why?" He looked at her then, fully, stripping away every defense. "Because you matter more than territory, more than peace, more than my own life." Before she could respond, Jin-woo's voice crackled through comms. "We're green, 60 seconds. Tae-hyung held her gaze 1 moment longer. Then he was gone, disappearing into tactical darkness, leaving Naomi staring at screens that would show her whether love was worth the violence it demanded.
The abandoned medical facility on Southside Chicago squatted in industrial darkness at 2:17 a.m., its windows boarded, its purpose forgotten by everyone except the men who'd converted it into a prison. Tae-hyung's team moved with military precision. 6 points of entry, synchronized breach, overwhelming force. Naomi sat in the tactical van with Heejin, watching through body camera feeds, every second agony. She saw muzzle flashes translated to screen flicker, heard shouted Korean and English, watched tactical choreography unfold in grainy night vision. Inside, Jade Serpents were caught catastrophically off guard. Outgunned, outmaneuvered, their supposed safe house compromised in under 90 seconds. Jin-woo's voice through comms. "Package secure. 2nd floor, east wing." Lorraine. They'd found her mother. The camera feed showed her, still intubated, still unconscious, but stable, monitors beeping steadily in a makeshift ICU. Medical equipment hummed around her, expensive machinery in a building that should have been condemned. 2 guards surrendered immediately when confronted with superior firepower. Tae-hyung's voice, primary target located, basement office. Park Min-joon, cornered like the predator who'd miscalculated prey. Tae-hyung's voice cut through comms, cold and absolute. "Clear out, this one's mine." His team withdrew. Naomi watched through his body camera as he descended concrete stairs, weapon drawn, entering a dingy office where Min-joon stood behind a desk, trying desperately to look dangerous instead of terrified. "You used an innocent woman to leverage me." Min-joon's hands spread in placating gesture. "It's just business, Kang. Territory, power, the game we all play." "She's not part of the game." Tae-hyung's voice dropped to something lethal, intimate. "Her daughter works in my home. That makes them mine. You violated that." What followed was brutal and efficient. Tae-hyung didn't torture. This wasn't about extracting information or sending elaborate messages. This was about consequences, delivered with surgical precision. The body camera shook with impact. Min-joon's begging echoed through speakers. "I didn't know she mattered." "Everyone in my house matters." The final blow. Silence. Tae-hyung emerged from the facility carrying Lorraine himself, cradling her intubated body with shocking gentleness. His crimson jacket, the one he'd worn in Seoul 3 days ago, was now blood-stained and torn. Knuckles split open, face spattered with evidence of violence. But Lorraine was safe in his arms, monitors still beeping, life preserved. Ambulance waiting, paramedics rushing forward with gurney and equipment, coordinated transfer to Northwestern already arranged. Naomi stumbled from the van, seeing him clearly for the first time. Killer and savior, monster and protector, the man who dismantled an organization for her mother's life. She should be terrified. Every instinct should scream danger. She wasn't. In the ambulance racing toward Northwestern, Lorraine stabilized between them. Naomi reached across the narrow space, took his bloodied hand, threaded her fingers through his, ignoring the split knuckles, the evidence of brutality. "Thank you." Tae-hyung stared at their joined hands like he'd never seen anything more impossible, more precious. "I'd do it again," he said quietly. "I'd do worse." She believed him, and that belief felt like falling. Dawn bled through hotel windows in shades of pink and gold, beautiful and indifferent. Lorraine was en route to Northwestern's ICU with a medical team, stable, safe, alive. Tae-hyung stood in the shower, letting scalding water wash blood down the drain, some his, most not. His hands shaking from adrenaline crash and something deeper he refused to name. He emerged wearing fresh clothes to find Naomi waiting in the main room. She hadn't left, hadn't run from what she'd witnessed through those camera feeds. She sat on the couch, still wearing yesterday's clothes, eyes red-rimmed but clear. "You should be at the hospital," he said quietly. "I needed to see you first. You saw me." He gestured to himself, fresh black shirt, but bruises already blooming across his jaw, split knuckles bandaged. "This is what I am." "I know." She stood, approaching slowly, deliberate. "I watched you kill someone tonight." "If that's a problem." "It should be." She stopped within reach, close enough to touch. "I should be horrified. I should pack my things and disappear. I should run." "Why aren't you?" "Because you killed someone to save my mother." Her hand lifted, hovering over his chest, over his heart. She didn't touch, but he felt the heat of her palm through fabric. "Because for 6 months, you've been nothing but kind to me. Because you paid a debt that wasn't yours, fought a war I didn't ask for, and kept promises no one else would make." "Naomi," warning in his voice, restraint fracturing audibly. "I'm not your maid anymore, am I?" "No," hoarse admission torn from somewhere deep. "Then what am I?" He caught her wrist, the hand hovering over his heart, his grip careful despite the violence still singing through his veins. "Don't ask questions you're not ready to hear answered." "I'm ready." Fierce, certain, eyes blazing. "I've been ready since you knocked on my door instead of breaking it down." His control shattered. Tae-hyung pulled her against him, one hand sliding into her hair, the other wrapping around her waist, as his mouth crashed into hers. The kiss was desperate, claiming, months of careful distance igniting into something volcanic and inevitable. She kissed back with equal fervor, hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer, erasing every remaining inch of space between them. No hesitation, no fear, just hunger and recognition and relief. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "I don't know how to do this without control," he confessed raggedly. "Then lose control with me. I'll hurt you. You've protected me more than anyone ever has." Her hands framed his face, thumbs brushing along his jaw. "I'm not afraid of you, Tae-hyung." Against her lips, barely a whisper. "I love you. I don't know when it started. Maybe when you corrected my tea temperature that first week. Maybe when you laughed at my terrible jokes. Maybe the first time I saw you. But I love you." Naomi's tears came silently, streaming down her face. "I love you too. God help me, I love you." They didn't sleep, just held each other as dawn strengthened into morning, processing violence and confession, the impossibility of what they'd become to each other. "What happens now?" she whispered against his chest. His arms tightened around her. "We figure it out. Together." Seoul, present day. The high-rise office building gleamed with contemporary luxury, all glass and steel reflecting a city that never slept. In the executive boardroom on the 47th floor, Tae-hyung sat at the head of the table in a black suit with crimson tie, his tattoos barely visible at his collar, just enough ink showing to remind people he came from somewhere darker than business schools and corporate boardrooms. He presented the real estate development proposal with measured confidence, command evident in every gesture. Beside him, Naomi sat in an immaculate white business suit, tablet in hand, presenting financial projections with precision that made the numbers sing. Her natural hair was styled in elegant twists, her presence both professional and magnetic. Visual callback, still complementary opposites, red and white, Korean and American, force and strategy, but now equals, partners in every sense. The clients didn't know his past, or pretended not to. He was Mr. Kang, legitimate businessman, real estate mogul. But the way he moved, the deference people showed, the careful respect, everyone knew there was more to the story. They just didn't ask. The meeting concluded successfully. $50 million contract signed, handshakes exchanged, champagne poured. Alone in the office afterward, Tae-hyung loosened his tie, watching Seoul's skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. "You were magnificent," he said. "We were magnificent," Naomi corrected with a smile, setting down her tablet. 2 years had passed since Chicago, 2 years of transformation that felt both infinite and instantaneous. Lorraine's recovery had been slow but complete. Meeting Tae-hyung officially, her daughter's dangerous savior, had involved initial suspicion that melted grudgingly into approval when she saw how he looked at Naomi, how he'd restructured his entire world around her safety. Naomi's choice to return to Seoul, to build a life with him, hadn't been easy, but it had been hers. Tae-hyung's empire restructured, legitimate fronts became primary operations, violence rare and calculated rather than routine. She'd integrated not as decoration but as partner, learning the business, earning respect from associates who'd initially dismissed her, proving herself sharper than most men in the room. Cultural navigation became their daily dance, her learning Korean formally, him learning about her heritage, creating fusion in their home that honored both backgrounds. The proposal had been traditional Korean ceremony meeting her mother's church blessing, 2 worlds merged. Challenges remained, his enemies, her adjustments, power dynamics they constantly negotiated with honesty and care. Their penthouse, the same one where he'd first heard her crying, had transformed, now filled with both their aesthetics, his minimalist elegance meeting her warm textures, Korean art beside African sculptures, traditional tea sets next to her grandmother's china. Evening descended. Naomi prepared tea, her choice now, meditative practice they shared, while Tae-hyung watched with reverence that never diminished. Lorraine called via video chat, healthy and vibrant, living in Seoul nearby, learning Korean with endearing enthusiasm, teasing them relentlessly about grandchildren. After the call, they stood on the balcony overlooking Seoul's glittering expanse. "Do you miss it?" he asked quietly. "Miss what?" "Your old life, being independent, before everything got complicated." She considered carefully, honestly, every single day. He flinched, old wound reopening. She turned to face him, framing his face with her hands. "I miss the simplicity of being invisible. I miss not worrying about your enemies. I miss not navigating 2 cultures and 2 worlds and building an empire while maintaining my own identity. Naomi, but I wouldn't change it." Her eyes held his, fierce and certain. "Because being visible with you is better than being safe alone. Because our complicated is better than my simple. Because you saw me when I needed to be seen, and you loved me, even when I couldn't accept protection." "You're sure?" Vulnerable question from a powerful man. "Every day I choose this. I choose you. That's not obligation, Tae-hyung. That's love." He kissed her, soft, reverent, different from that first desperate kiss born of violence and confession. This was certainty. This was home. They stood together on the balcony, Seoul glittering below, his arms around her from behind, her hands resting on his. 2 people who'd chosen each other across impossible distance. The walls that once separated them were gone. The fear that kept her small was gone. What remained? Choice, daily and deliberate. Inside, visible through the glass, red silk jacket draped over white chair. Symbols of separate worlds, now intertwined and inseparable. Not a fairy tale. Something better. Real.